Hi, my name is Jason Smart, and I'm a special correspondent for the Kiev Post. But I'm also a political scientist who studies the Putin regime, namely its foreign policy. And over the past week, there's been some really unusual things that I think are worth unpacking. So let's look at what happened just on Sunday. After midnight, and probably the latest press conference he's ever held, Vladimir Putin decided to announce that he wished to have bilateral direct talks with the Ukrainians. And he said that he was willing to do it in Istanbul. Now, what made this interesting is that Zelensky wasted no time in responding. He said, sure, see you on Thursday in Istanbul. I'll be waiting for you. Putin personally. Now, that single statement kicked off a lot of different events. The White House responded, even the Pope responded. Everybody started talking about it, and European leaders have talked about it. So is it real, though, is the real question. Does Russia really want peace? Or is there something else to be seen here? What's the truth behind this offer from Putin? And there's other group of people that ask a very legitimate question. Is it even legal for the Ukrainian president to meet with Putin? Because there is a law in Ukraine that nobody is allowed to meet with the Russian counterparts. However, that is an executive order signed by Zelensky in 2022 to avoid people who are not representing the government, that is the office of the president, going out and negotiating by themselves with the Russians. So obviously, since it's an executive order, he can cancel it out, override it. It's up to him. So that's actually not a problem. But going ahead, what is it really about? Is it about negotiations? Has Vladimir Putin had a change of heart? Does he want peace? Or is it really a message to Washington? The Russians want to show that they're good guys, acting in good faith, and so do the Ukrainians. Or is it a third option, one shared by the U.S. Intelligence Committee? And I think that in generally what most people would believe is that Russia simply wants to buy time. Russia simply wishes to have time to regroup, to rearm, and then further re-invade Ukraine. And right now it's going through the steps to buy that time necessary. And this opinion is not new. This is the same one shared by CIA Director William Burns back in March. He said that Putin's objective remains the same. That is the subjugation of Ukraine. He wishes to take it all over, hoping that over time, the West will lose interest, stop giving intelligence, stop giving arms, and stop supporting Ukraine. And as the support declines, then Russia will have the opportunity to take the rest of Ukraine. So this opinion is not unique only to Mr. Burns. This is also shared by the U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence 2025 Threat Assessment. That assessment came out with the idea that, listen, if Russia says that it wants peace, it's most likely just trying to find a way to extract concessions. It's not trying to find a way to get a lasting peace. It is not interested in compromise. And that's exactly the same view of the Institute for the Study of War. They came to the conclusion that Russia is trying to inject surrender terms into the conversation because they simply don't want peace. They simply want to take advantage of the situation. They want to make sure that they can do as much as they can to project the idea that they want peace, but to take advantage of it, to use it for their own political objectives, which have not changed since 2022. So what does Putin himself want? What's his actual goal? I would have to agree. It's most likely the same as 2022. Nothing has changed whatsoever. Putin wishes to see several different things happen. And what are those things specifically? So I think one thing is for sure. We know that there's the 5 territories that Russia is occupying part of right now. Obviously, Crimea is fully under occupation, but then there's also Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. Now, unlike Crimea, they're not all totally under occupation. Lugansk is about 98.5% under occupation, but Donetsk is about 60%, Kherson 75%, and Zaporizhia about 70%. Importantly, in Zaporizhia, they do not occupy the city there, which is a very large city. They only occupy the surrounding territories. It's also the home of the nuclear power plant that's gotten a lot of attention, which Russia does currently occupy that side of the river where the power plant is located. But aside from that, Putin also wants Ukraine to abandon its plans for NATO and to demilitarize. Now, think about the demilitarization. That's sort of insane, saying we've invaded you before, but now we want you to give away your weapons, so we won't do it again. We promise. In fact, these are not negotiations. These are terms of surrender. It's like saying you must go along with this. We will fully disarm you, take away your ability to defend yourself, but we will then guarantee your security. Russia has guaranteed Ukraine security since the Budapest memorandums in 1994. Obviously, we see that means nothing. Russia invaded Ukraine. So Russia cannot be trusted on its word. Ukraine needs to be armed. But meanwhile, there's other things happening within Russia itself. Things aren't going so well. The inflation is over 10%. Interest rates have jumped to 21%. It means there's no loans, there's no growth, businesses are suffering. The deficit now is about 1.5% of GDP, triple what the Russian government was aiming for. And oil revenue, which keep in mind, at one point was about 50% of the national budget. Currently, it's only about 30%. That's a huge drop. You might wonder, well, today, who is buying Russian oil? Because obviously the Europeans have gotten off of it. The West has put the price caps on it. It's made it a lot harder for Russia. Well, we'll dive into that. So currently, let's remember that the U.S. Senate, Senator Lindsey Graham specifically, put out a proposal for 500% tariffs on any country buying Russian oil. Now, that would destroy the Russian economy because as it is about 30% of the budget, seeing that take a hit would really not be good for Moscow. Currently, about 47% of all of Russia's oil goes to China. 38% goes to India. So 47% to China, 38% to India. And if we look ahead, what else do we see? We see that there's another problem. China has already started to pull back, as has India. India was very clear from the very beginning that when Trump took office, actually, that they were a little bit worried about being sanctioned, and so they started distancing themselves from Russia. And I think the reason for that's obvious. India does about $1.7 trillion of trade with NATO and $6.1 billion of trade with Russia. So in the trillions versus 6.1 billion. And in the case of India, we see a similar situation. But 22% of India's exports go to NATO and only 0.6% go to Russia. 22% to India, 0.6% to Russia. In the case of China, 31% of its exports go to NATO, 3.4% go to Russia. 31% goes to NATO, 3.4% goes to Russia. Huge difference. So if there's a pick and choose, it's very clear that though the cheap oil might be very useful, it's great to have around, it's not worth losing that much of their economy or having 500% tariffs put on their goods. So let's look at what's happening in China, which is also exacerbating the situation. In the first quarter of 2025, Chinese banks saw shrinkage in profits. The loan growth has been very slow. Beijing has had to inject $139 billion into their economy, and the central bank has cut the reserve ratios. At the same time, the U.S. tariffs have surged to 145%, and that's something being discussed today as we speak in Switzerland between the Chinese and the Americans of what to do with these tariffs. And it looks like they will be reduced. So China right now is in a good situation with the U.S., or at least it's improving. Why would it make things worse and just get rid of this 145% tariff and then get a new 500% tariff due to the new Senate bill to put sanctions on countries that buy Russian oil? So with both Russia and China on the ropes, their so-called alliance is weakening. And it's weakening pretty fast. And despite the fact that just a few days ago, Xi Jinping was in Red Square with Putin for the Victory Day parade. They sat there, they looked happy. Putin said, I'd love to see the Chinese open more factories for Russian businesses. It'd be great. We can all work together. The fact is, the relationship's very weak. China has no economic need for Russia, but Russia definitely has an economic need for China, which allows China to have a very strong leverage in all negotiations. And since the beginning of the war, I've said that I think that Turkey, various Arab states, and China are playing the key role of being the leverage on Russia because they're the ones that have influence and the ability to really force Russia's hand. But more than that, let's look what happened earlier today. 5 European nations have made a very important move. Germany, France, Spain, and Poland, and the UK joined in a formal demand. They said that there should be a 30-day ceasefire, and they put it on Russia. And they said they want to answer by the end of today. And they were very clear. If Russia does not comply with this, expect more sanctions, expect more pain, expect that things are only going to get worse. Things will not get better for you soon. And so what sort of sanctions would the Europeans put on that they have not already put on? Well, they would put more sanctions on different Russian banks, large banks with international trade, namely 4 of them. Doing that would really not be healthy for the Russian economy. Banning more dual-use technologies, and also targeting third-party brokers that are helping Russia to cheat the sanctions that are currently implemented. And the message is very clear. We don't trust your peace offer, Putin. So now put up it. You said you wanted peace. Start the ceasefire now. And if you don't, it'll prove that this was a trap, and we'll have more sanctions coming your direction. So this is a very good situation for Ukraine. Now support is being consolidated. And it looks like the White House finally is working better with the Europeans on this. So let's imagine this, though. Let's imagine the peace talks begin. What is it that Russia really hopes to get? I think that the objective is very clear. Russia wishes to lock in the land that it's already taken as a minimum, to have Ukraine agree on that. then that's a starting point for all future negotiations. But if Russia refuses, then what's going to happen? Well, Russia's going to blame Kiev for prolonging the war, say that it is really not about us. It's the Ukrainians who did this, and they'll find justifications. Look, they didn't accept the fact that we've taken various territories. They didn't accept what is the actual geopolitical reality today. They're living in their own dream world. We should just accept the territory we've taken. That's going to be the first step that Russia's going to seek. And Russia, though, has got another reason that it has to do this. And it's not just about Ukraine. So I'm going to go back to the global perspective, which is the one that is the most interesting, I think, which is that Russia globally has a lot of different things happening that are very, very important for it. One is that it's had a lot of setbacks recently. So in the case of Africa, we'll start with the global south. In the case of Africa, look at Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali. In all three of those countries where there was coups, military coups, backed by Russia, supported by Russia, there's been some recent setbacks, especially after Syria. After the Assad regime fell, the Taras naval base there, which Russia had used for years and years, was critical for Russia projecting strength into Africa, and namely to help support those regimes. And you ask, why does Russia need these regimes in Africa? Well, it's due to the rare earths, due to the rare metals, and they're trying to collect things there. And they enslave the local populations, they torture them. It's terrible, but it's like Russia does everywhere else. We look at the other part of the global south, where Russia is also trying to project strength, and it can't show a total loss in the case of Ukraine. We see what's going on. May 9th parade, great example. Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Brazil. Their leaderships all came to Moscow and sat there. And each one of them, though, has their own personal interest of why they support Russia. So let's look at Brazil. Lula, the president of Brazil, has been president 3 times. His popularity is collapsing. It's about 24%, 25%. They have elections scheduled for October next year. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the world. Well, guess what? They're trying right now to begin negotiations with the U.S. to take the sanctions off of them. And if they do that successfully, that's going to hurt Russia because they're going to be producing more oil, and more barrels of oil means the prices go down, and that hurts the Russian economy. So Putin needs to figure out a way of controlling his allies, not only his nemesis. At the same time, we have to be clear about what Putin is thinking today. And I think that's very abundantly clear, as American intelligence and European intelligence agrees, that Putin is really not offering a peace negotiations. He's offering a strategy to benefit himself. His goals have not changed, just his methods. But for the first time in a long time, there may no longer be any long-term interest for Russia. That is to say, time is operating against Russia. The economy is collapsing. China cannot help them. The West is holding firm. Ukraine is advancing. And Russia's global influence amongst its partners in Africa and in Latin America is in decline. It is definitely slipping. So while peace talks may come, and they could come even this week, as is expected, we have to really ask, what's the goal here? What is Russia really trying to get to? Are they really seeking peace? Or is this just a new phase of their war against Ukraine? And it's not just about Ukraine, which is the most important thing here. It is Russia's global war against us. Keep in mind, Russia is an ally of Iran, of North Korea, and other countries who are operating against the United States. More than that, it is operating in Europe today actively with arsons, with assassinations. We see Russia cooperating with international drug cartels. We see them operating terrorist organizations such as Hamas and Hezbollah. We see that they are openly working against the global system with a desire of destroying it. So anytime that we see Russia advance, we have to be clear. Russia's not doing it to be a nice guy. They're not doing it because they want peace. Russia is doing it because they hate us and they want to destroy our system. Thank you.